Hello everyone, my name is Mick Sullivan and welcome back to another installment of Virtual Frazier. We know a lot of people are at home doing their part by staying at home. And we understand that that can probably get a little boring, so we're going to try to help you out with some interesting content. And that's what I'm going to do here with my friend Al. About a year ago, I was reading a book that was published by the Smithsonian in the 1980s, and it was about immigrants and how they shaped the United States. And there was a name that I found in the book that was really, really interesting to me because I'd heard his name in conjunction with Louisville before. His name was Albert Fink. So, if you know anything about me, if you've watched the other videos, you know that findagrave.com is one of my favorite websites. Highly recommend you check it out. And I looked for Albert Fink, and I knew that he was buried in Cave Hill, but I wanted to find out particularly where because I like to go see those things. And what I found was there were actually two, not one, but two Albert Finks in Cave Hill in Louisville's Highlands neighborhood. I figured there had to be some sort of relationship between the two, but I wasn't sure. It wasn't in the descriptions on there, and I knew at the very least that they were not father and son. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what Al has to do with all of this, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But right now, we're going to head upstairs to the roof. So I'm up here on the roof at the Frazier History Museum. A lot of people have gotten married up here. If you have ever been a camper, if there's any campers watching at home, you know that one of my and several other kids' favorite things to do is to watch trains cross this bridge right here. It's known as the 14th Street Bridge because it occupies the space that would be known as 14th Street in Louisville. Now, what does this have to do with Albert Fink? Oh, everything, let me tell you. So in 1848, there was a wave of German immigrants that came to America. There was a failed democratic revolution that year as lots and lots of citizens rebelled against the monarchy there. And when that failed, they had to leave, and Albert Fink was one of those. He came to America with his brother. They landed in New York City, and they didn't get much work. Now, he had had engineering school in Germany, so he became a draftsman, I believe, for the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. Before long, he worked his way into Kentucky and became a big part of the Louisville and Nashville Railway. In fact, this bridge, the 14th Street Bridge, the original one that stood there, was an Albert Fink designed bridge. The original truss system was one that he invented called the Fink truss system. Though it's not generally used on bridges today, you still find it in buildings and home facades and that sort of stuff. It is referred to as the Fink truss, named for Albert Fink. Albert Fink was an imposing figure. He was really, really tall, one of the tallest men in Louisville, and they referred to him as the Teutonic Giant. But he was also well regarded as being very, very kind, having a distinct sense of justice, and really, really, really liking kids. He spent a lot of time with his family and children in his neighborhood. The Ohio River is 981 miles long and is one of the most important threads of commerce in the entire country. And this point is the widest point in all 981 miles. It's actually a mile across to Indiana, which meant that this iron bridge, when it was built, was the longest iron bridge in the United States. So it was a marvelous feat of engineering. But Albert Fink's genius went far beyond engineering. He also had a personality that brought people in and made people trust him. And he had a very, very, very methodical mind, which was why some industrialists in the North recruited him to travel to New York and help them figure out how to connect all of the competing railways and homogenize and stabilize prices, which was something that the federal government had not done yet and would not do for many decades. He's well remembered for his ability to negotiate and connect all of those lines, making everybody happy and getting all sorts of goods at a low price to American citizens. He is buried in Cave Hill, just like someone else who bears his name. Let's head downstairs and find out about that. So it turns out that that other Albert Fink wasn't his son, like I thought. It was actually his nephew. Albert Fink I came over with his brother, and that brother named his firstborn son Albert Fink, after his brother. You know, families do that. Anyway, that Albert Fink has a really interesting biography as well. He's often tied to the Nome Kennel Club in Alaska. He actually moved to Alaska during a gold rush there and became a lawyer, worked as a lawyer in the gold rush there, but also was a founder of the Nome Kennel Club. Some people call him one of the fathers or the forefathers of dog sled racing in general. But he eventually came back to Chicago, particularly during the Prohibition years, and wound up as an attorney for Al Capone. Now, if you know anything at all about Al Capone, you know that they tried to get him for all sorts of crimes. He ran illegal gambling dens, he was selling booze on the sly, and you know what? He was pretty well implicated in lots and lots of murders. He was not a good guy. And anyway, when the feds finally made a plan to get him, it involved nothing more than tax returns. And that's where Albert Fink came in. Albert Fink was his tax attorney, who defended him against the federal government, who made the case that, well, if you have all of this stuff, you have all of these cars, you have all these homes, you have all of this stuff, you obviously have income, and you haven't paid income tax, so we're going to pin that on you. The trial was actually pretty hilarious because what they did was they went to all of Al Capone's salesmen. In fact, they went to his underwear salesman and put him on the stand. And that man testified there before Al Capone and Albert Fink and a whole courtroom full of people that Al Capone spent like $14 on a pair of underwear, or $12, which in that kind of money in the 1930s, particularly during the Great Depression, was a fortune. Most people were wearing the same underwear day in and day out and washing it very irregularly. Though it was a tense trial, that was actually a moment of levity. In fact, there's witness accounts that Albert Fink and Al Capone both couldn't do anything but laugh about that. It's funny to have an underwear salesman on the court. Now, of course, Albert Fink was not successful, and Al Capone did go to jail. That Albert Fink is also buried here in Louisville in Cave Hill. Well, hope you enjoyed watching. We will have more content and more fun stuff for you. So until we see you in person, we will see you virtually. Thank you very much from the Frazier History Museum.